Hey guys, Dr. Brad here. Now, if you have Hashimoto's, you might find that you have to drag yourself out of bed in the morning. Now, there's a reason for that, and there's some things that you can do to improve it. When we have increased levels of internal physiological stress due to autoimmunity, it will change the responsiveness of our adrenal system and the timing of our cortisol rhythm. Normally, cortisol should be low at night, which helps us to fall asleep. But in the morning, we should experience something called a cortisol awakening response, which helps us to get up and start our day. With the cortisol awakening response, there is a rapid increase in cortisol levels, which helps to increase our blood glucose, stimulate brain activity, and those cortisol levels will continue to rise for about 30 to 45 minutes after we wake up, which helps us to transition from sleeping to wakefulness. However, if this response is blunted in any way, it can make us feel tired in the morning, even if we've had enough hours of sleep. We can feel groggy, we can notice increased levels of pain, and in general, it can just make it hard for us to get up, thus dragging ourselves out of bed. Not to mention, getting those cortisol levels elevated is really critical for keeping our energy steady throughout the day. As I just said, cortisol should be high in the morning and low in the evening. And the way that it transitions is after it spikes up with the cortisol awakening response, we should have a nice, consistent decline until it gets to its lowest levels in the evening hours. The problem is, if we never have that peak, we start to transition into those lower levels earlier in the day than we should. Anyone experience an increase in fatigue around 3 or 4 p.m.? One possibility is that our cortisol levels aren't high enough in the morning, which means that we run out of energy earlier than we would like. The cool thing is, we have the capacity to influence our cortisol awakening response, and we can rehab it like many other areas of our physiology. So as long as we're doing things to address and support our Hashimoto's, which is likely the main driver of changes in our cortisol awakening response in the first place, then while we're doing that, we can use some additional strategies in tandem that can help improve our cortisol awakening response, make our mornings a little bit easier, and support our progress overall. Well, there's a number of different aspects that can contribute to the increase in cortisol in the morning time. One of the big ones is the change in light as we go from dark to sunrise to the morning time. As we know, this is a problem for people in general, whether or not they have Hashimoto's. And our exposure to artificial light, while limiting our exposure to natural light, can really wreak havoc on our health in a number of different ways. But one of the great ways to support our cortisol awakening response is to prioritize proper light exposure in the morning. Something that I found to be effective for my patients is recommending 10 minutes of outdoor daylight within 30 minutes of waking up. Now, of course, there's going to be variability depending on where you live in the world, what time you wake up, but if it's within reason, we might try to shift your wake up time based on the season, and to the best we can, match it to your schedule. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be outside, and the reason why I try to keep it within that 30 minutes of waking up is because that natural increase in cortisol should happen within 30 to 45 minutes. So by timing that morning daylight with your natural rhythm and internal clock, then hopefully we can get an added signal to your body to tell it that, yes, this is the time we should be waking up, this is the time we should be increasing that cortisol and stimulating more body activity. While some light therapy boxes claim to mimic outdoor light, I do think there is still likely a difference in intensity here. So again, when possible, go outdoors, but if we don't have the option or we're in a pinch, using one of these alternatives might be reasonable for us. The second thing that can be really helpful in retraining our cortisol awakening response is exercise. Now, exercise is always something that we have to be a little bit cautious with Hashimoto's because of the fact that, as we've said before, exercise is acutely inflammatory and places a stress on the body. Now, if we can tolerate that initial increase in inflammation, it can be really beneficial because the long-term effects of exercise are very anti-inflammatory and supportive to our immune system. But If we're severely inflamed or we aren't used to doing much exercise, then it can make us more susceptible to not tolerating our exercise and potentially making our symptoms worse. But even though we can be sensitive to exercise, that doesn't get us off the hook. And we've said before that we can change things like the intensity, duration, and frequency of exercise to make sure that it matches where we're at with our health, and therefore we can slowly build things if need be and allow us to create a foundation for increasing our exercise over time. But here's the really cool thing about our cortisol awakening response. This is not something that needs a ton of exercise to change. It just needs to be done at the right time and the right intensity. Again, we want to be doing this within 30 minutes of getting up, but I sometimes encourage my patients to simply get out of bed and within 5 minutes start their exercise. What we're shooting for is just 30 seconds of high intensity movement. High intensity means that we are increasing our heart rate to about 80 to 90% of its maximum, or if we think of it more simply, essentially that's doing an exercise that is intense enough where you're not able to talk while doing it. The other option is doing moderate intensity exercise for 30 seconds to a minute and a half. With moderate intensity, your heart rate is at about 50 to 70% of max. And the difference between high intensity and moderate intensity is that with high intensity, you can't talk because you're breathing so hard, but with moderate intensity, you are still able to. No matter which one you pick, I like something that is easy for people to do in their own house and is also safe for them to do at these higher intensities. Often I'll recommend using things like a spin bike, a rowing machine, or even maybe an elliptical. But if there are other exercises that you like and you can do safely, then it's okay for you to use those as well. And if you're using one that I didn't mention, feel free to share it in the comments below. Now, before we talk about the final way to support your cortisol awakening response, I did want to mention that if you find this information helpful and you're looking for other ways to address your Hashimoto's, improve your energy, and improve your symptoms in general, then there are ways that you can get that extra help, and you can do it by working with me. The way that I help people is I have an online course called Natural Hashimoto's Transformation. And in the course, I help women with Hashimoto's who are exhausted, frustrated by their symptoms, not getting help from their doctor, and are overwhelmed by trying to do things on their own. I teach them to understand the root causes of their Hashimoto's, while also providing a clear plan that includes nutrition, supplementation, and lifestyle changes. That way you can make confident decisions about your health, focus on strategies that lead to real change, and allow yourself to get back control of your life. In the course, there are 8 modules covering all the critical foundational pieces that go into healing Hashimoto's, as well as weekly live question and answer sessions and a supportive Facebook group. So if you want to work with me and utilize the information and strategies that have helped thousands of people with Hashimoto's, email me at contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com or click on the Calendly link and we can find a time to get you scheduled for a free consultation where we can discuss all the details, answer questions, and make sure that things are a good fit. Alrighty, back to the rest of the video. So the last way that I help people to improve their mornings is by utilizing the appropriate supplementation. And for me, the things that I find are most helpful is the utilization of glycyrrhiza and also L-carnitine. I will use glycyrrhiza or licorice root extract in a similar way to other adaptogens. Glycyrrhiza may support better fuel levels and energy production, and also improvements in our cardiovascular system. I find that it can be helpful for people who are chronically fatigued and have changes in their adrenal system, and therefore it makes sense that part of that response may be in aiding our cortisol awakening response. Some people can be sensitive to glycyrrhiza, and it's been known to cause things like increased heart rate and feelings of anxiousness. So as with most things, I think it's best to start with a lower dose and slowly increase over time. I typically like to use glycyrrhiza supplements that are in the format of a topical cream or liquid drops. Generally, I'll have people start with a dosage of about 30 milligrams and potentially increase all the way up to 300 milligrams. As I said, the other supplement that I like to use for this is L-carnitine, which can also help to support our fuel levels and improve physical activity. taking 1 to 3 grams of L-carnitine in the morning is enough to get the job done. Keep in mind that some people can have GI distress with L-carnitine, things like cramping, bloating, nausea, and diarrhea. So start with 1 gram, test it for 2 to 3 days before increasing it by a gram until you get up to 3. So there you have it. Increase your light exposure, increase your physical activity, and if it makes sense, choose a few targeted supplements. But the last thing I'll say is that if you are having some of these problems with getting up in the morning, don't expect the change to be right away. It can take 2 to 3 months, if not more, to start seeing significant changes with your cortisol awakening response. But if you can be consistent with your strategies, you will start to see some changes earlier than that, which can confirm that you're on the right path. And I know I already said last thing, but last thing, if you want to make sure that you're supporting your cortisol levels throughout the entirety of the day, which will give you an extra advantage in terms of your sleep quality and also supporting that rehab of your cortisol awakening response, make sure that you're getting adequate levels of protein. As I've said many times before, people with Hashimoto's have a higher demand for amino acids. And if we skimp in this area, it's going to make all of our efforts and all of our changes much less effective. But if we want to help out with our sleep and we want to help out with our mornings, it's even more critical in these areas. But if you didn't get a chance to share before because maybe you don't have a favorite morning exercise yet, make sure to let me know how your mornings are in general. Is it easy for you to get up? Is it a slog? And what has helped you to make some changes here? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear what's been working for you. But that is it for today's video. And as I said before, if you're looking for more help and support, make sure to reach out about my online course. Otherwise, thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for liking. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel as I'm posting new videos every Thursday. But my name is Dr. Bodle. I love you guys. I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.